What if you could turn your passion for helping others into a career that changes lives, starting with your own? Join Empower's Certified Professional Empower Coach Academy, accredited by the ICF and powered by Oregon State University. Our next cohort begins February 28th. Visit yesempower.com to reserve your spot today.
Welcome to Rewired. I'm your host, Tiffany Grimes with Empower Coaching and Training. Welcome back to Rewired, where neuroscience meets real-life change. Today's episode is a deeply meaningful one for me, both professionally and personally. I'm honored to have had the chance to interview Margie McNabb. She is a coach, a professional trainer, a facilitator, and one of the most impactful leaders that I've had the privilege of learning from. She's also recently retired, which we will talk a little bit about in today's episode. Margie has over 40 years of experience working across nonprofit agencies, social services, education systems, and private sector organizations with a focus on building environments that truly support youth, families, teams, and communities. Her work has received state and national and even international recognition for collaborative leadership and community innovations in both Michigan and Oregon. Margie held significant leadership roles, including serving youth and families as the director at the Job Council in Medford, Oregon, where her programs received widespread recognition for effective practices, and as a professional development specialist for the Oregon Department of Early Learning and Care, supporting workforce systems across the state. Margie has also served as an adjunct faculty at Southern Oregon University Graduate Business School, where she taught learning with emotional intelligence and leader as coach, both classes I took in my master's in management program. Margie is also the founder of McNabb Consulting, where she offers individual and group coaching using a solution-focused, strength-based model grounded in intrinsic motivation, resiliency, and vision. With that, on a very personal note, Margie has played so many roles in my life. She was my very first life coach. She was a direct manager for me for many years. She's been a mentor for decades and remains a dear friend. As I mentioned, she was also a professor in my master's program. She has shaped not only my professional path, but the understanding of leadership, emotional intelligence, and what it truly means to lead with heart. She was really the first person I had worked with who stood in that leadership platform and led with her heart. And it was transformational for me in my pathway. In this conversation today, we're not just talking, though, about Margie's professional brilliance. What we're talking about is really her humanity, because among those accolades that I've mentioned, Margie is also now a widow. She lost her husband, Richard, to a brain tumor after a rapid 6-month journey from diagnosis to death. What followed was a profound season of grief, and what I witnessed was something I can only describe as dancing with grief. Margie met grief with openness, with courage, with deep self-awareness. She sought support, engaged in grief coaching, joined groups, read, talked, felt, and allowed herself to be changed by love and loss. This episode is a gentle, honest, and neuroscience-informed exploration of grief, not as something to fix, but as something to move with, to feel, and to integrate. If you're navigating loss, supporting someone who is grieving, or simply wanting to understand the human nervous system in the face of love and loss, this conversation is for you. Margie, thank you so much for joining the Rewired podcast today.
Just an honor. Thank you for including me.
Thank you. I shared with the listeners in your intro just how we met and how our paths have intertwined over the last few decades, and just that I adore you as a human being, and your leadership. I had the opportunity to have you as a friend and a leader and a community member, and just have not had any aspect of you that I haven't just been in awe of.
Oh, thank you, Tiffany.
Yes, I was just sharing with somebody the other day. I had an interview with somebody who was wanting to get into our coach training program. And they were saying, what got you into coaching? And that story always involves you, and how you helped shift the culture of the organization I was in, and really opened up my eyes to really, for the first time, feel like, oh, I could be a leader. That she leads in a way that is with her heart and her brain, and it felt so real and human centered. And your process of grief has been exactly the same way. And so I wanted to just talk with you today and share with our listeners. I think, we're going to specifically talk about your process of grief and the loss of Richard. And I think so many people right now are feeling so many aspects of loss and grief around, our world, our democracy, our freedoms, certainly around the loss of relationships and family. And so I think there's so much that you can speak to that listeners would appreciate and take to heart as well.
Yes.
So we always start the podcast with the same question, which is to hear your definition of the word empower or empowerment, what it means to you, and what is feeling empowering in your life today.
That is such a great question. And what comes to mind for me, what empowerment means to me is a deep knowing, and then acting on that deep knowing, and acting with clarity, confidence, courage, and no doubt or hesitation. And how I learned that, I was 16 and I had to make a huge decision. That was an adult decision. And, at 16, our prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed. And so this was very difficult. And it was my grandmother who taught me about deep knowing. She said to me, this is what's going to help you know what decision to make. Before you go to bed at night, think about the decision and think about the situation and think about it with your heart. And she also gave me a prayer. She was Catholic, and she gave me a beautiful prayer, and it was very much around love. And so I did that. And then one morning, and she said to me, you will wake up one morning and you will absolutely know. There will be no hesitation. And so that's exactly what happened. I made the decision. I made the decision out of love. I had no doubt it was the right decision, especially when you look back on it. And I realized a little while later, a few years later, my grandmother taught me about intuition. She taught me about how to listen to my heart, what it felt like. And I realized, and you and I know this language, it was head and heart data. So I was reflecting on it with, not only what I intellectually knew for a 16-year-old, but also what my heart was saying. And so being able to take both of that and bring it together and make that decision. So, and what I felt was empowered. It came from my heart, but I felt it through my whole body. And ever since then, that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to go back to that, when I've been stuck. Grandma's words, you'll have a deep knowing. Just go to bed, think about it, let it go. Think about it with your heart, and you will wake up knowing. Yeah. So, and every time I've done that, the decision has really been right.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens,
just the deep knowing and the trust, to trust yourself that it will come, and to trust that niggling, that knowing, that messaging.
Yeah. The other thing that happens with it is you just have clear boundaries too. If there is a situation where another comes forward and says, well, you should or you shouldn't, it's like, thank you. and I know this is what I'm going to do. And it's kind, it's clear, and there are boundaries too. So, yeah.
How are you living that now?
Well, I did that with my retirement. So I retired a little over a year ago, and I loved my work. Absolutely. My whole career, I've loved my work. And I always said, well, I'll just know when it's time. And so I started feeling, like you were saying, the niggling. And I thought, I'm just going to reflect on this now. The timing was very right.
Yeah.
And so that's one way I've done it. And I've certainly done it, when I had the energy throughout the grief too. And the decisions made, like, for example, the celebrations of life. How will I do that? We're in the middle of a pandemic,
Right.
But they were very clear. It was very clear once I was able to just, again, reflect with love, let it go, and it'll come. And it did. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And just for our listeners, I want to share when I ask Margie if she wants to do something every single time, the answer is, I'm retired. You let me know what works for you. I'm free. I'm retired. My schedule's wide open. I'm like, I have 15 minutes next month. Will that work? I'm retired.
Yes, that's been fun.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Well, you mentioned, doing this with grief as well. And so let's turn the corner and start kind of exploring this a little bit. And of course, I know your story. I knew Richard, as much as I possibly could and know you very well. But our listeners don't. And so I'm hoping you can just start with Richard. Let us know who he is. And, we can get into the illness and all of that later, but just him, give us a snapshot of Richard.
Oh, yes. I love talking about him. And the snapshot may be about 2 hours long, but I'll try and keep it down.
He lived a big life.
He did. He was an amazing man. He lived an incredible life. He was raised in Southern California, and he had a lot of opportunity to just give back just in his growing up years. He had a lot of opportunity to explore what he loved to do, such as, high contact sports like football and rugby. And Richard, that pathway, I think, opened him up to just be a man who explored and loved adventure. He was definitely, I would say, kind of a dopamine addict. He was a mountain climber, skydiver, rock climber. He just did it all. If he was interested, he learned it and he did it. He did long distance bicycling. He was a marathon runner. Anything that he was interested in, he focused. He had a lot of passion for it, and he ended up excelling in it, except for a couple of things. Since I was raised in the upper Midwest, I'm a much better driver in snow than he is.
Sure.
He was also someone who contributed a great deal to his community, to our community. For example, he joined the Jacksonville, Oregon Rotary Club and helped build a playground that's right here in our neighborhood. He also was diagnosed with throat cancer when his daughter was 2, and he was in his early 40s. And he was committed to living. He was committed to seeing his daughter graduate from kindergarten. And he did recover. He was able to see her not only through kindergarten, but also high school and her college graduation. So he was able to do that. And what he did was turn that around and give back. He was also the facilitator and started the Southern Oregon chapter for people with oral head and neck cancer. And when he retired, he volunteered for a group called First Descents, which is a group, they do like week-long activities, and it's with young people who are either living with or survived cancer. And so he would go for a week and he would kayak, mountain climb, ice climb, you name it. And he was called Hitch because he told the story of hitchhiking across Europe. So they called him Hitch, and he was the photographer. So he not only did all of that with them, but he captured it and then did videos of their week-long activities. And I just remember one little story of that. When I was with him, we backpacked in the Sierra Nevadas and we came to this lake, lots of snow, ice. There was a huge iceberg on it. So it's very cold. And I have a video of him diving into the water, swimming, and then climbing on the iceberg and standing there like he had just conquered the iceberg. So
What?
he lived that life, until he died.
Yeah.
On his 64th birthday, that was January 11th, 2020, he rode his bike 64 miles. And he was then diagnosed with a glioblastoma, stage 4 brain cancer, within about 3 months of that. So he was a passionate liver.
Yes.
He
Oh, I
lived life
love
fully.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just full on, living life
Yeah.
full on.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
I
have
can
raised.
vouch that he made a mean Manhattan for sure. Yeah.
Good. Yes, he did. My my dad and he also bonded over Manhattan. People called him a Renaissance man, and I do think that was him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. As you know, you're doing this journey with him, both in life of him living so fully, and then here, at the end of life. What were those months like for you and, thinking both emotionally and physically?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to make a real difference? Become a certified professional coach with Empower Coaching and Training. Our next CPEC cohort, accredited by the International Coaching Federation and offered in partnership with Oregon State University, starts February 28th. Spots are limited. Learn more at yesempower.com.
Yes, thank you. That was quite the journey, as you can imagine. Anyone who has experienced or cared for someone who has glioblastoma, it is in the brain, and a lot happens quickly. When he rode his bike that 64 miles in January, he came home and he said he had some weird experiences, a smell that he couldn't place. It was almost like a metallic flower smell, is how he described it. And then shortly after that, other things started happening. He had an infection in his tooth. He also started his vision changes, and there were a few other things that were happening. And I'm, as you know, a systemic thinker, and I was connecting the dots. And so at this time, we had closed down for the pandemic. So we were about a couple weeks into everyone home and not going out in the community unless you're wearing a mask. And of course, the doctors, going to meet with them, you would have to do a telehealth visit. So I said, Richard, this is systemic. These are not just one-offs. It's important you call your doctor and talk to him about it. Share all that's been going on for the last few months. And so he did. And I will always be grateful and love this doctor because he didn't just set it off to the side. He immediately responded and said, these things are all happening in your head. I think an MRI is needed immediately. So he got an MRI. And again, pandemic, I couldn't go in with him. I had to sit in the car. I had to wait. And it was, I believe, the first week of April, we got the results, and he had a mass on his brain the size of a walnut. And it was in his right temporal lobe. So immediately we started researching next steps. His doctor, of course, was working with us, and it involved a craniotomy. So we were looking at Stanford, and we were also looking at Oregon Health Sciences University. And the doctor in Stanford, who was probably one of the most renowned neuro-oncologists, suggested another one in Portland at Oregon Health Sciences University, which was great because his daughter lived in Portland with her partner at the time. And we were able to go up there and get the surgery done. So all this time for me, even though we had the very clear diagnosis and what to expect, which included 14 months is long-term survivorship, and that it will grow back, that glioblastomas have a root system that you can't see. It's microscopic. Even if he goes in, the doctor goes in and gets the tumor and pulls what he can without harming permanently parts of the brain, he's not going to see all the roots. And they double in size in 49 days. So, yeah, so they were all very clear with me and with his daughter. And I was, oh, he beat throat cancer. He's an adventurer. He's done all this stuff. He has focus and passion. He's going to beat this too, intellectually. That's where I was. And of course, that was how I was going to support him. So we were in Portland for 2 weeks. He had 3 grand mal seizures right after the surgery. And again, Olivia and I couldn't go in. We had to be outside. When he started coming back after the surgery, he didn't know where he was, what was happening. And, his brain was scrambled, which makes sense. And a wonderful nurse had an iPad and FaceTimed with us. And once he saw our faces and heard our voices, he started coming back pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So we returned home. He was sundowning, which was part of the brain kind of recalibrating, meaning he was up all night and he slept during the day. So I can honestly say I did not get a full night's sleep probably for the full 5 months, craniotomy to passing. He did get back to a regular sleep, but it was very erratic. Towards the end, he started getting lost in the house. And when he would get up to go to the bathroom, he'd get lost. And so I would have to be right there with him. I feel like I was very, very blessed because we have a community who is incredibly supportive. I continued to work. We were working remotely, so that was very helpful. And I needed to work because I needed to just take a break. And we have a very good friend who basically grew up with Richard. He came and stayed with us. And Richard couldn't drive anymore. He had high energy. He wanted to go for walks. He wanted to go for bike rides. And of course, we had to say no.
Yeah.
But our friend drove him around, stayed with him, gave me a chance to work. And of course, I had a very, very supportive team, coworkers and supervisors. And so that was really good. How I describe those 5 months is we would be on a plateau for a while, and then it would drop. We would drop. And it was sudden, but there was a new learning that we had, a new adapting that we had to do based on something he could no longer do, and how we had to step up and help. And that's the other thing. His daughter was here a lot, as much as she could. She worked too, but again, she could work remotely. So we had a team. And then we would plateau for a while on that new level, and then we'd drop again. And we'd adjust. And then the last 10 days, I describe it as we fell off a cliff and we bounced off boulders. And in that last 10 days, we also had the Almeida fire, which is the fire that roared through this valley and took out 2 towns. We were in evacuation level 2 and just trying to figure out how we were going to get out. And his confusion just accelerated. I had suitcases packed. My daughter and I were working out a route. His daughter was pretty much stuck in Portland. She couldn't get down here for a few days. And so it was terrifying, is all I can say. And he was going fast. And then here we are in this, what was it, 400 air quality index. We couldn't breathe outside, and we could see it was time, and we needed to get his mother and sister here as soon as possible. I was also very blessed in the fact that I had the Oregon Health Sciences University team on call for me. There were about 4 or 5 of them, and they knew me. I could call them anytime, and I'd always get their voice, not a voicemail, their voice, and they'd guide me. The very last MRI that I had done, because I had taken him to the ER based on, some things that were happening, just to see again what was going on. And the tumor had crossed the blood-brain barrier and shifted his brain. So it was off center. So you can only imagine the changes that brought. And so watching all of this, again, intellectually at this point, I'm saying, oh, he is going to die. He is. But my heart still hadn't grasped it. And so I have to say, when his mom and sister got here, then it was like it brought the reality in deeper.
Yeah.
And thankfully, they got here in time, even though we couldn't breathe. And he passed the next day. He waited for them. So that's how that journey went.
So much happening within your own little world, and also literally globally we're experiencing this pandemic, and then locally having this fire that was terrifying, and not knowing what direction it was going to turn and where to go, and even how to breathe during those time periods. What was happening for you? I mean, you talked a little bit about, this optimism until really those last 24 hours. There was this final acceptance of this is happening. Mm-hmm. What was happening for you, in your body, your energy, your sense of safety? How was Margie in this process? How were you taking care of you, and what were you experiencing?
During that time, I did not do well taking care of me. I was so focused on making sure he got all his medication in time. He was eating. He was not bike riding or hiking. I did have help. There's no doubt about that. And also because my family and friends know my medicine is movement, that I have to do something to get all of my angst and energy out, and fear and worry, that they would come and stay with him and say, go for a hike, just go, we got it. And, everyone who did that, I could definitely trust in making sure he had his medication. If he was starting to get agitated, what to do. Well, we also had hospice, so I do want to share that. But again, it was the pandemic, so very little connection and, touch points in person. So yeah, that made a difference. And so those were some of the ways. And like I said, working really helped. That was part of I think resilience building for me, is I had a chance to kind of move the stuff aside and just focus on some very cool project, or
right.
How are we going to reach these childcare programs during the pandemic? What's the new way we're going to do things?
Yes. These tangible conversations that had an answer, right? What you were living and breathing had no answer.
Exactly. I was very tired. I was giving myself grace in recognizing, okay, Margie, you're not going to be able to do everything you usually do. And your focus right now is this. And so it was one foot in front of the other. It was watching him all the time. It was asking for help. And I set up a website called Caring Bridge. I think you were probably included in that. Yeah. And it was really helpful because I could update everyone on that website. And I didn't have to email several different people in different clusters. I didn't have to call people. I didn't have to text people. I would just do an update. And there was also a request page. So I could send out a request and say, is there anyone available who can take Richard to radiation this week? And this is the times that I need. And there would be a lineup at the door. It was so helpful. So I asked for help. I got out when I had the opportunity, and I do want to say I trusted the people to know they were going to care for him, which of course was family and close friends. And I also just I this was actually very wonderful that we continue to do the things like gardening together. We canned, we made jam. He didn't do much at that point, but it was okay. It didn't matter because if he was there in the kitchen with me, it was stuff we did together. So all the things that we could do, I would walk with him when he was still able to walk and hike. We would hike. So play with our dog, watch a silly movie. So we did that too. We made sure of that. Yeah. And those were the moments that I cherished.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to level up how you lead at work and at home? Empower Coaching and Training brings brain-based coaching, mindfulness tools, and real-world strategies you can share with those you serve and live with. Get started now. Visit us at yesempower.com.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And what I want to transition now to is your life after Richard's death. And the way that we have a lot of people in common in our life from our professional world together. And the way that I often describe witnessing you and your experience is that you danced with grief. And of course, that comes out of, I know, your love of ballet and your history with it. And the way you've so described over the years of like this need, you just feel it in your body, this need to dance. And so part of it is just having that identity that I see in you as a dancer. But I saw you from the outside really dance with grief. Like it was a dance partner who called you, I want to dance with you. And you said yes. And you did that in so many ways rather than just go back and sit on the bench or resist it, And so I'm curious what that phrase means to you and what helped you choose to engage with grief rather than avoid it.
Oh, that's such a beautiful question and beautiful phrase. It just gives me goosebumps. Thank you, Tiffany, for seeing that. It is, as I mentioned earlier, movement is my medicine, and dance through most of my life has been my creative expression. It's like my number one creative expression. And so it's a great combination to be able to use it as medicine as well. So in the first week, I just want to touch on that because of the intensity of it. I was so grateful and blessed that during that first week after he passed, his mom and sister stayed here, his daughter and her partner, now her husband, stayed here. My daughter was here every day. She lives in Southern Oregon, so she's a huge support for me. And I'm from a huge extended family. My son is in Florida, a lot of communication, a lot of connection. We did a few ceremonies because it was, again, pandemic. We couldn't hold a service or a celebration of life and have people come together safely. So we did some things together to honor him, which was really good. And saying that, I was also so numb. When the funeral home came and took him away, my daughter and my stepdaughter and her partner basically just said, no, you can't watch this. No, it's too painful. We're all going in the other room. And I said, no, you guys If you can't, fine, you go. I'm staying.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did. It was an important part of my release and I didn't let go for a long time, but at that part of the journey,
Yeah.
that little bit of letting go and seeing him go, having them stay for a week really helped ease that pain, and doing little ceremonies we did. And then everybody left. They had to go back to their world and their lives and their grief. They're all of us were the center of the concentric circle of grief. And so I just I just fell apart. I just fell apart. I couldn't get up. The only reason I got up was to feed my dog, and I couldn't even take her for walks. It's like that's when it really hit. And so you Tiffany, you know me, and and what you said earlier about my leadership style of leading from the heart. I have to say, I have not had a lot of experience as a leader prior to my work with you where that was allowed and accepted. Because oftentimes leaders come from the brain, the intellect. And there's a missing piece of compassion, empathy, and listening clearly. So then moving on to teaching emotional intelligence, studying emotional intelligence, getting that total acceptance and understanding of what emotions are and how important they are, and they're part of our lives. That was my permission to let myself feel. If it meant that I stayed in bed for 2 weeks and cried and maybe occasionally ate, then that's what I was going to do. I was going to stay with it. I also did things like got all these books. Like I just ordered books online.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm living it. Now I want to understand the theory. I want to understand
Yeah.
how to work with this. So I did that. I also started hiking. I started hiking a lot. Again, I couldn't go back to hot yoga because we weren't open yet.
Right.
And so the best thing I could do was hike. And I would go, and it was so good for me because I felt the grief moving through, and I allowed it to as I was climbing and crying and also witnessing. I was witnessing things. I was witnessing the eagle. There was an eagle a few times who followed me. I was witnessing all of the wildlife signs of wildlife I was seeing, including a bear that my dog chased. However, we're both alive, so it turned out good.
Yeah.
So recognizing those as, okay, I'm going to take those as signs, that he's connecting with me and welcoming that. I also went up to a place that Richard and I would go to, especially in the fall. We loved it. And in the winter, too, to cross country ski. It's Green Springs. It's a resort in the mountains, and there's some beautiful cabins. The Pacific Crest Trail goes past there. So I rented a cabin, and I got the book, let's see, Girl's Guide to Grief. It was kind of a workbook, to be honest. But that was my goal. I was going to go up to this mountain resort. I was going to follow this guide. I was going to draw my grief. I was going to cry my grief. I was going to write my grief. And I did. I did all of that. And I continued to do that after going home. I also hiked quite a ways in the Pacific Crest Trail with my dog, which was very, very cool to do that at that time. I really felt Richard with me then. So I journaled. I made a little altar with mementos and pictures. I have a sacred spot in my house where I still journal. I still meditate. Of course, I've meditated and journaled most of my life, but this is in that sacred space, kind of honoring and acknowledging him. I wrote him letters. And you're going to love this, Tiffany. I did a pie chart. Of course, I did a pie chart of my emotions.
Oh, I do love that.
So our society just doesn't like grief. It doesn't honor grief. Employers will give you maybe 3 days of paid leave to grieve and then move on. And that's not how it works. We all have different timelines in our grieving. We have different ways that we grieve. We have different personality styles, and we grieve following those. Like, I'm very heart-led. I am emotional. I am sensitive, and I cry a lot, and I feel a lot, and I talk about it with people I trust who, use that level 3 listening skill of just holding the space, listening 80% of the time, and 20% of the time just sharing stories, asking questions, wanting to hear more, setting aside personal agendas or expectations. So I did surround myself with those people. I did see, I went to Winter Springs. That is a grief counseling service here in the Rogue Valley, and it's out of La Clinica. And they had a widows group. And I met widow who is very like-minded. And keep in mind, this was 5 years ago, and we have been FaceTiming nearly every week since then. And our journey is so similar. I could say, oh my God, I had so many gut punches this week, and these are what they were. And she said, oh, I was having the same thing. So I think in the exploration and allowing myself to feel and dance with it and move with it, I accepted that grief includes anger, it includes guilt, anxiety, fear, relief, relief that, he's no longer in pain, or whoever our loved one is no longer in pain, and guilt that I'm still here, anger that I'm still here and you left me. And so all of those things, and being able to even just see them in color on a pie chart based on the size of intensity of each of those emotions helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Get through that numbing time, that first year where you're just, and I have to look at this. I have a society that doesn't want to hear about it, and I'm going to surround myself with those who do. The other thing, too, in all of this, losing a loved one, no matter how you lose them, is traumatic. Losing a loved one during a pandemic, watching their brain deteriorate and what that does, and a wildfire that's very close. There's more layers of trauma there. And so that is more the counseling I got, because I recognized, oh, okay, this is a trauma response.
Yeah.
So it's time for me to start looking at that and healing from that.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing. The other thing I want to mention too are all the firsts, the first birthday, the first holiday, and he died September 20th, 2020. So we had my birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, his birthday, his daughter's birthday. They were kind of like bam, 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 bam. And my daughter and his daughter, we held on to each other. We really did through that. And my now stepson-in-law, and his mom and sister from a distance. So we were really close and helping each other through that time.
Yeah. Honoring what was, and also making space for this life that you're living without him physically, right? And allowing that to evolve naturally and letting go. I think as I'm listening to you, I think a couple of things that I want to highlight that I noticed is, one is this just kind of, as you're describing this self-observation, of like hovering above you and caring for you as you experienced your grief, and, knowing that it would look 1,000 different ways, and you were going to continue to show up for that, whether that's to lay in bed or go on a mountain retreat with a workbook, right? I think the other thing that you mentioned, and of course, this is no surprise, just knowing you're from a very large, connected, beautiful family. You are in a, you build community where you go, and you did the same thing with grief. Like, it's my own journey, but I'm also with these family members who are experiencing those grief, their own level of grief. And I'm connecting with other widows and other people and new family members as they come in and really look outward as well for this experience as a community. And then the third thing I want to just highlight again is this, idea of, you said it's been 5 years, and that there's this honoring of him and this loving of him, and also giving yourself permission to be in this life right now and not always be looking backwards. I think, if I was going to highlight 3 things I hear, those really stuck out to me.
Yeah. It's definitely been the journey to get to that place. Just for those who have, lost a spouse. And my dad died almost a year to the day before Richard. So I was still in grief about him. I mean, I always will be. Grief lasts forever. But the thing is that what I recognized from past losses is that living with someone who dies, it's all the little griefs. Like, oh, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be eating breakfast with me? Where are you? And oh, wait, I'm finished with work. Isn't this when we go for a walk together? Or isn't this when we cook dinner together? And so all those little rituals that you do throughout the day it's again an adjustment. And it's just would cause the ugly crying, would cause falling on the floor and laying with my dog, who is she was my grief therapist at that time too. So
yeah.
But that was something that it was like, oh, this is what's happening. I'm grieving all these little connections we always had that I just took for granted. And okay, here we go again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is I also, and I call them tidal waves of grief. And I realized, and so I was following what you and I know to do during rip tides is you flip, float, follow. So eventually I got to, okay, well, I'm drowning. So let me just flip over and float with this. And next one won't be so intense. And so that was something that I realized. And where the tidal waves came more intensely and more often was in the second year, because I was no longer numb, just taking it one step at a time, still in this cloud, this brain fog, lack of memory. In fact, yeah, that comes up a lot. Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
What did I say? And as I was going through my journals and the books that I purchased at the time, after, you and I talked about doing this, I realized I bought a few of them twice. One was, and you won't be surprised at it, was The Grieving Brain. So I bought that a couple of times.
Read it several times through. Yeah. It was just as profound each time, right? Each time you cracked the same book. Yeah.
So those are, in those 5 years, and I say it's, I think one of the things that was the most powerful for me in support was when my aunt, who lives in Michigan, messaged me and said, let's meet for lunch. I know you are in deep grief and I just want to talk to you. She is an elder with the Grand Traverse Band of Odawa Ojibwa Native Americans. And my uncle, her husband, my mother's brother, died about a year and a half ago. And so when my aunt messaged me, she said, I'd like to share with you the Native ways of grief and hoping that would help help you navigate this. And I can't even tell you how powerful it is. And surprisingly enough, I've been doing some of it before knowing the ceremonies and the journey. And so that was really, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, this just shifts it all. And that's when I started feeling lighter. I started like getting through the brain fog, saying, okay, this is a new chapter, albeit one I did not want to join. I'm here though. I'm here.
Yeah.
So let's open up to it.
Yeah. Wow. And so I'm curious on this side, we're going to start to close out. Again, you said this, we all know this, it's a saying, but grief doesn't go away, right? We keep living our life and maybe it feels smaller or more manageable. We gather up more tools and more people. But for someone who might be listening to this, who is on day one, the doorstep of, or knows that they are going to soon become part of that club member that you don't want to be a part of, or maybe they're just trying to stay strong or push through grief that they've been experiencing, what's one truth or permission you wish you had been given sooner, or that was given to you, that you want to share?
That it's such a great question. And of course, I could go on a whole list of them, but I would say the most important thing is allow yourself to feel all of it. Just let it come. Ride that tidal wave, flip, flow, follow, and know that it's very natural. Grieving is an expression of love, and thank God I can grieve because I loved so much, and accept it. And surround yourself with people who honor the journey, accept it, and allow that grief to happen, as opposed to, okay, I'm uncomfortable now, stop. So avoiding shoulds, just let your grief process happen, accept it, and know it's going to be different. And give yourself grace, as well as others who want to help.
Yeah.
Give them grace, and give yourself, most importantly, grace and compassion.
So good. Yeah. And reaching out. I mean, I think tying some of the messaging you gave as well is, know that place where you want to access a therapist, a group, where you feel like maybe you need more of that structure right now, that the beauty is it's there and you can get it, and to ask for that and to move towards it and to accept it. And even if we don't have elders in our lives like you do who offer up these wisdoms, we can read the books, we can reach out, we can absolutely create that for ourselves as well.
Yeah, definitely. Reaching out is huge because we cannot do this alone. We're not designed to do this alone.
Yeah. Well, Margie, thank you. Thank you for all of this. Thank you for sharing your journey. And we'll try to, in our show notes, put any links to authors you've mentioned or groups you've mentioned, any grief, hotlines or websites. We'll definitely include those for any of our listeners. Thank you so much, Margie.
Thank you, Tiffany. This has just been an honor, and I love talking about him.
Thanks for tuning in to Rewired, where neuroscience meets real life change. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave a 5-star review. Your feedback helps people discover the tools, insights, and inspirations they need to create lasting change. While you're leaving that 5-star review, please also subscribe and share an episode with a friend. Remember, the way you think shapes the way you live. Every intentional thought, every mindful choice rewires your brain and your life. So go live intentionally, live thoughtfully, and never underestimate the power of your own mind to transform your world. Until next time, this is Tiffany with Empower Coaching and Training. Stay curious, stay empowered, and keep rewiring for real change.
Every family has challenges, and every parent deserves support. At Empower Coaching and Training, youth and parenting coach Jasmine Chandler helps parents and young people find clarity, connection, and practical tools that make a difference. Visit yesempower.com to connect with Jasmine and explore our team of incredible coaches today.